Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by Dr. Daniel Duggan, who is here on behalf of MemorialCare. Well, Dr. Duggan, thank you so much for joining us. How are you today?
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm doing very well.
Good, good. Well, you're an orthopedic surgeon, but today we're going to focus on total joint replacement surgery. Now, exactly what does that mean, total joint replacement?
Well, really what it means is in orthopedics, when we fail conservative care of taking care of joints in the body with arthritis, which is really a complex manifestation of a degenerative process happening where any bone would articulate with another bone. So the nice smooth cartilage that caps into those bones start to wear away. People have pain, swelling, limited motion, in extreme cases, severe deformity. We now replace those bad joints with artificial joints, and it can really improve and give people a better quality of life.
Yeah, and I hear that the technology obviously is getting better and better these days. So before we talk about some of that technology and actual surgery itself, I forgot to ask you a little bit about yourself. So tell me how long you've been with MemorialCare.
Gotcha. So I'm an orthopedic surgeon that practices out of Saddleback Hospital in Laguna Hills. My practice, OC Sports and Orthopedics, has 3 offices, one in Mission Viejo, one in Anaheim, and one in San Juan Capistrano. I'm board certified and fellowship trained, and I've been at this since 2005, and I enjoy what I do.
I like the way that MemorialCare has partnered with other people rather than just, going with their own internal folks, because it probably brings quite a bit of different ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good collaboration, and that being said, that we're able to kind of practice at different hospitals, and of course bring all that information and all that experience to the table.
You mentioned arthritis as being the primary issue for joint replacement. Can we also wear down those joints with exercise?
Yeah, that's a very good question. People always ask that. And I think when we start talking about arthritis, there's about 100 different types of arthritis. Arthritis just truly means that the smooth cartilage wears off the end of the bone, and as the bones start to grate against each other, we have inflammation, we have swelling, we have pain. Arthritis could be wear and tear, right? And that's what we kind of think of as like older people arthritis. We call that osteoarthritis. You could have something called rheumatoid arthritis, where your own body's attacking its own linings and you still damage that cartilage. You could have infectious arthritis, where you have an infection that damages the cartilage. Or a lot of the times we call post-traumatic arthritis. You have an injury when you're in college or high school, and that damage never heals, and you go on to arthritis at an early age. Lastly, I think the one that's the most frustrating is genetics plays a huge factor here. So you could do everything right, but if you have the genetics to end up with wearing or thinning of cartilage at a younger age, well, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. That's just, that's the cards that you're dealt, and that's how you deal with it.
Is there some kind of a test that you can run for people to see what kind of arthritis they have or where they're at with it?
Yeah, there's probably not one specific test. It's really a combination of a lot of things. And that's really where, seeing your primary care doctor, an orthopedic surgeon, a rheumatologist, you can start to differentiate, okay, what type of arthritis are we dealing with? Now, there are different ways to manage this, but ultimately when it gets to end stage arthritis, where people have very limited function, motion, ability to do things, then no matter what the cause is, you're looking at potentially operations.
Okay.
Like joint replacement.
Right. So for instance, for a joint replacement, now, of course, when you say that, it sounds like to me, it's like a whole thing, like you're going to replace an entire knee or an entire shoulder or whatever it is. Is that the case, or can you also do partial?
Yeah, so there are different ways to go about this. And really, when we talk about joint replacements, we're really kind of capping the two ends of the bone with an alternative bearing surface. Instead of having bone touching bone, you have something else that's touching each other that's not going to have pain receptors. When we start talking about something like partial joint replacements, if you think of, say, the hip, you have a ball that sits in a socket. So if you just replace part of it, maybe the ball, and leave the socket, that's considered a half a hip replacement. Okay. If you're talking about knee replacements, there's actually 3 compartments in the knee, and in very specific circumstances, if one of the compartments is bad, but the other 3 are still very good, you can consider something like a partial joint replacement. It's a decision that really needs to be really evaluated and discussed with your surgeon, because the last thing you want to do is do a partial and then a few years later have to now get converted to a total, when you should have just had that one surgery and been done with it early on.
Well, exactly, because if you do that, you're having to go through the whole recovery again.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. So it's a decision that, really needs to be looked at very closely to see, are you a specific candidate for a partial, and what's the long-term solution here? What you don't want to do is have to keep going under, these major operations multiple times. You want to kind of time it right where you do it once and you never have to worry about it again.
Now, some people, just don't want to do surgery at all. And so they want to baby it, getting to that point where you absolutely have to then have surgery. For instance, I thought that I had heard that, let's say, I'm just, for example, say knee. I thought that when people run, a lot of them wear that joint down to where it is bone on bone. And some people can have an injection of some sort of fluid. Is that still an alternative?
Absolutely. And I'm a very conservative surgeon, and I always recommend a very conservative approach. And as that fails, your treatment options become more and more aggressive. Right. You could always move towards something like a knee replacement. Just once you have a knee replacement, you can't go back. I think it's a decision that you have to make with the patient, with the surgeon, deciding, okay, what's the right timing on this? What am I trying to get out of it? Oftentimes my patients fail the conservative measures. And when they fail the conservative measures, injections, medications, braces, hey doc, my quality of life is not very good. I'm unable to do the things that I want to do. Well, then now we start talking about other ways to manage this, including joint replacement, which can ultimately give you a great quality of life back. But the caveat here is it's going to take several months to be able to get to that level. Right? It's not an instantaneous thing.
Right. And I know we're all very impatient people. We want to have it and then be right back at it in a few weeks. So I get it. Let's talk about, recovery, because like you said, it can take a lot of months. Are there varying recovery times for different parts of your body? Like if your knee was replaced, it's so many months. If your shoulders replaced, tell me the time frames.
Yeah, so everybody's a little bit different. Obviously, we all heal at different rates. You think about someone having a knee replacement in their 50s versus somebody having it in their 80s. That's going to be a big variation on, of course, healing. Mm-hmm. Body weight makes a big difference too. Someone who's very light and is able to get back and work with physical therapy is going to be a quicker recovery for someone who's very overweight.
Right.
So these things can all play a factor, but typically if you're looking at joint replacements, I tell people you're looking at probably 2 to 3 months as a typical recovery on this. Mm-hmm. However, you're going to continue to have improvements for 6 months up to a year.
Right.
And I remind all my patients, this is not how I'm going to feel the day after surgery. This is how I'm going to feel 2 to 3 months. There's a recovery here. And if you talk to anybody who's had a joint replacement, they'll tell you, the first few weeks were very difficult, but I did my physical therapy. I got through it. And once they start talking 3 to 6 months down the road, the typical story is, why didn't I do this sooner, right? My quality of life has improved and I can get back to the things I enjoy doing.
Well, right. And being a good patient for sure. Now, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is somewhat of a preventative measure, so we don't have to have some of these things happen, is being overweight. That can certainly add so much more stress to your body.
Yeah, they did a study several years ago now about the joint reactive forces when you walk. So just simple walking. And what they found out is for every pound that you have, when you walk, you're putting 4 times that through your knee.
Wow.
So you think about that. I mean, someone who weighs 100 pounds is putting 400 pounds of pressure through their knee each step they take, and how many steps do you take a day?
Yeah.
Also, how many people are just weighing 100 pounds? A lot of people are weighing more than 100 pounds.
Yeah.
We also found that if you're doing stairs or running, that number, instead of 4, now becomes 7. So it's 7 times your body weight. And that's why people with bad arthritis say I have trouble up and down the stairs. Well, because you're increasing the contact pressure, 7-fold.
Got it. Yeah, that is a lot of information in terms of, or just a lot of extra weight, like you mentioned. That's crazy. And you do see people struggling when they're walking if they are overweight, because it looks painful when they're walking, and maybe it is. I don't know them, but it does look like it hurts. So, for instance, let's just pick one person out of all of the people who exercise as a runner. What are things that they can do to prevent this from happening?
Gotcha. So, like I said, there may not be something that is completely unavoidable, but really when we start talking about, say, a runner itself, high mileage. So the more mileage, the more wear and tear you're putting on the knee. Now, if you're someone who's, genetically predisposed to have great cartilage, you could run your entire life and maybe not have a problem, versus somebody who's not a runner and genetically predisposed to not have great cartilage. Well, they can end up with arthritis even though they didn't do a lot of running. So that's the real frustrating part about it. The other thing that we know is traumatic injury plays a huge impact. So somebody who injures their knee, damages their cartilage, doesn't matter what age, cartilage doesn't have a blood supply, so it doesn't heal itself. So that cartilage damage that you have just sticks with you for the rest of your days. And that's how you can accelerate the wear on joints from these sorts of injuries.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Thank you so much for the information. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And we'll be right back after this.